Breaking news from around your world on this Monday, July 15th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. India on Monday aborted the launch of a spacecraft designed to explore the far side of the moon. India's space agency said the Chandrayaan 2 mission was called off less than an hour before liftoff due to a technical snag in the 14-story rocket launcher. Chandrayaan, which means mooncraft in Sanskrit, is supposed to make a soft landing on the lunar south pole and deploy a rover to explore water deposits confirmed by a previous Indian space mission. The spacecraft was to take 2 months to reach the moon before it was scheduled to deploy the 6-wheeled rover Vikram lander to its surface in September. Monday was India's third failed launch attempt to land a rover on the moon. The launch was first scheduled in April 2018, but was postponed to October of that year, which was subsequently delayed until Monday. A revised launch date will be announced later. India is trying to join the ranks of the United States, Russia, and China as the only nations to make a soft landing on the moon. Landslides and flooding triggered by seasonal monsoon rains have killed more than 100 people in South Asia. In Nepal, police said Monday that at least 67 people have been killed, with another 43 injured due to the torrents of rainfall that are expected to continue through the next few days. Police said another 30 people were still missing and 1,446 people were reported rescued. In India, more than 5 million people have been affected by flooding in the states of Bihar and Assam, the two worst hit in the country, where there is an urgent need for food and drinking water. Officials said at least 25 people have died in India, and that number could significantly increase over the coming days because of continuous rain and overflowing rivers. In Bangladesh, at least 14 people have died in 7 districts, while more than 60,000 families in low-lying areas have been marooned in their homes or shelters. The monsoon season lasts from June to September throughout South Asia. Tropical storm Barry failed to unleash catastrophic flooding in New Orleans, but it still swamped parts of Louisiana with up to 17 inches of rain and transformed part of the Mississippi Delta into an ocean. Although Barry was downgraded from tropical storm status Sunday afternoon, its torrential rains continued to pose a threat Monday. Much of Louisiana and Mississippi were under flash flood watches, as were parts of Arkansas, eastern Texas, western Tennessee, and southeastern Missouri. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards was extremely grateful that the storm had not caused the catastrophic floods that had earlier been forecast. More than 90 people had to be rescued in 11 parishes, but there were no reports of weather-related fatalities. Forecasters had warned of a continued threat of heavy rains into Monday as the center of the storm trudged slowly inland. Many government officials continue to urge caution, warning that dangerous flooding was still possible as rivers rise. The National Hurricane Center said parts of south-central Louisiana could still see up to 12 inches of rainfall, with isolated areas getting as much as 15 inches of rain. A 7.3 magnitude earthquake jolted the eastern Indonesian island of Halmahera, which is part of the country's Maluku island chain. The U.S. Geological Survey said the quake occurred at a depth of 6.2 miles, and the main quake was felt throughout cities in the Sulawesi and Papua Islands, and there were at least 7 aftershocks, each stronger than 5 magnitude. Last week, a 6.9 magnitude quake rocked the northeast shore of Sulawesi, which is west of the area impacted on Sunday. 1 hour before the earthquake in Indonesia, a magnitude 6.6 quake struck northwestern Western Australia at a depth also of 6.2 miles, 12.6 miles east of Broome. Indonesia regularly experiences major earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions because that area sits on what's called the Ring of Fire, which stretches from North and South America to Japan and New Zealand, covering several major fault lines around the Pacific. The Congolese Health Ministry confirmed on Sunday that the Ebola virus has spread to the city of Goma, home to more than 1 million people. The patient is a pastor who tested positive after being screened at a health center. He arrived in the city via bus from Butembo, about 125 miles away, and had been meeting with people who have Ebola. Officials said the bus driver and 18 passengers will receive vaccinations Monday. The health ministry said in a statement, due to the speed with which the patient has been identified and isolated, as well as the identification of all passengers from Butembo, the risk of spreading to the rest of the city of Goma remains low. Since the Ebola outbreak began in the eastern part of the country last August, more than 1,600 people have died. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said late Sunday night that he had granted Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif a visa to visit New York for a United Nations meeting, but that his movements would be limited to traveling between UN headquarters, Iran's UN mission office 6 blocks away, and the nearby Iranian UN ambassador's residence. U.S. diplomats don't roam around Tehran, so we don't see any reason for Iranian diplomats to roam freely around New York City either, Pompeo said. The U.S. is required to promptly issue visas to foreign diplomats heading to UN events in New York, but nothing more than that, Pompeo said. The Trump administration has considered sanctioning Zarif, which would complicate efforts to resume negotiations on curbing Iran's nuclear program. American Airlines has extended the cancellations of its Boeing 737 MAX jets through November 3rd, 2 months longer than planned. American said the move would result in scrapping about 115 flights per day. United said Friday it was extending its cancellations to November, a month longer than it had previously expected. Airlines around the world grounded their Boeing 737 MAX aircraft in mid-March following 2 deadly crashes of Boeing 737 MAX planes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. A total of 346 people were killed. Boeing came up with a software fix for an anti-stall system on the planes that was believed to have contributed to the crashes by persistently pointing the jets' noses down, apparently due to faulty data. American, which reports earnings in 10 days, has said the grounding cost it $185 million in second quarter pre-tax income. China's economy continued to slow down in the second quarter, with growth dropping to its lowest level in 27 years, as Beijing remained locked in a trade war with the U.S., according to Chinese officials. The economy grew 6.2% between April and June compared to a year earlier, matching estimates. In June, retail sales went up by 9.8% and factory output rose 6.3%, while investment gained 5.8% during the first half of the year. Following President Donald Trump's decision to impose more tariffs on Chinese goods, exports to the U.S. fell 7.8% in June compared to a year ago. Representatives from the United States and China are still trying to craft a trade deal between the two countries. Activists and officials in Russia are warning of a gold rush for mammoth ivory in the country as the permafrost thaws. The melting permafrost has made it easier for prospectors to find and dig up woolly mammoth tusks and other remains that can then be sold to China, where it is fashioned into jewelry and other decorations for a small fortune. Woolly mammoth ivory preserved in permafrost in Russia's Yakutia region reportedly makes up 80% of Russia's trade in what is largely an unregulated market. While activists and regional officials aim to regulate the trade market, local officials argue that such a measure could disenfranchise locals who say they should have the right to collect a limited number of tusks and live off the proceeds. Novak Djokovic defeated Roger Federer to win his second straight Wimbledon men's singles title and his 5th overall. The tennis match lasted just under 5 hours and ended in the first ever Wimbledon gentlemen's final tiebreak. Djokovic, ranked number 1 in the world, has now won 16 major championships, gaining on Federer, who is the all-time leader, with 20. Djokovic, who is 32, said on the court after receiving his trophy, "This has always been the tournament for me. I used to make the trophies out of different materials in my room, just imagining that I would be standing here." Federer, who was trying for his 9th Wimbledon title, said he hoped his marathon battle against a younger opponent would give some people a chance to believe that at 37, it's not over yet. And that's your update for this Monday, July 15th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening and for supporting this podcast with your generous donations. And I hope you have a wonderful week.